Hi guys, my name's Dan. I'm a junior here at Vanguard. I'm majoring in psychology, minoring in criminology, and I'm also part of the VU Rec team. That's just team, we host intramurals throughout the campus and we do stuff like outdoor hikes. Right now we're doing indoor basketball, indoor soccer. So we do like a bunch of fun stuff, trying to get you guys like involved and just, community, just through sports and stuff. So I'm gonna tell you guys my story today. So this is my story. I'm gonna start off with my testimony pretty much. And it starts when I was a young kid. When I was about 5, 6 years old, my parents were going through a lot of trouble with their marriage. And a lot of those issues ended up being projected onto me. So not that it was my fault or anything, but just the issues they had was kind of like trickling into my life. I remember actually going up to a teacher one day and she was asking me like, hey, like, how are you doing and stuff? And I told her, I said, oh, good, just like mom and dad like fight a lot. And she was kind of like confused by that. And eventually she told my parents, and that's when my parents realized like, oh shoot, like, this might be something that's like affecting them being together. So they actually went through the whole separation process. My mom lived with her mom, my dad lived with his mom and dad. And so I was just kind of bouncing back and forth between the two homes for a long time. That's really tough as a kid. I don't think I really fully understood what was going on at the time, but all I knew is that mom and dad weren't together, and it just kind of felt like out of place. I saw a lot of other parents like getting along, and for me it was just odd as a kid to just see mom and dad separated. But eventually you'll see how this kind of leads to the bigger picture with Christ and stuff. So as that's going on, they're really deep into the process, really close to getting divorced. But in the midst of all this, I have an aunt, and her name is Shayla. She's one of my mom's sisters, and she has been a huge influence on my life, and I really love her a lot. And she was the first person to really take me to church. So when I would stay with my mom on the weekends or throughout the week or whatever, she would tell my mom like, hey, like let's go to church, let's go to church. And my mom kind of wasn't really about it at the time. She would kind of reject the idea of church and trying to like develop a relationship with God and stuff. She always believed it, but she didn't really like pursue anything. So finally, after saying no so many times to my aunt just decided like, no, like it's time to take Daniel and take him to church. And my mom was like, sure, like whatever, it's something to get him out of the house Sunday mornings. I'm sure she had some time to herself. So I started going to church with my aunt Shayla. I'll never forget this church. It was called Fado, which was an old church where I used to live in Lake Forest. And I started going there weekly. And really is where I started to meet the Lord and met a lot of pastors there. And even as a 7-year-old, I was already starting to like tell them to pray for my parents. I would tell them every time I went, like, please pray for my parents. I pray they come back together. So it started kind of getting known that like, oh shoot, like this little boy, like he's really like his parents need some help right now. So as time went on, I was going, so my mom started getting really curious, like what's all this about, So she ended up coming to church. She started going to church. Through the grace of God, my dad started coming to that church, and through the Lord's work, they actually got back together. They were one signature away from becoming divorced, and I think that would have affected a lot of things in my life. I think it's way too common, parents getting divorced, but the fact that they're back together was like truly a miracle for me. And it was probably a couple years later, maybe when I was 8 or 9, I went to a VBS through that church, and that's where I decided to officially give my life to the Lord. That was a big deal for me back then. I don't think I really understood the magnitude then, but that whole experience was amazing. And I really thank my parents for getting back together, and my Aunt Shayla for really pushing me to come towards the Lord. And so yeah, that was how I started to accept Christ. So I'm now going to talk like a couple like important parts in my life. So in November of 2019, I decided to get baptized, which was also another really big deal in my spiritual walk. That was awesome. I didn't go at Fado. I go to another church called the Bridge RSM, and I know the pastor there. And I finally decided, like after so many years, I was like, you know what? Like I'm ready to get baptized. It was 2019, so I wasn't quite out of high school yet, but I knew like I wanted to get baptized and really, start my walk with the Lord strong, because I didn't know what college was going to bring or anything. I didn't even know if I was going to Vanguard back then. So anyways, moving along. So the first time I really struggled with something was when my grandfather passed away in 2016. Not the first time I struggled, but like one of the biggest things that affected me was when my grandfather passed away in 2016. I was still kind of young at the time, but it really like shocked me to like see death in the family. So he passed away from cancer, and I saw like the effects that had on my family. And I remember just kind of keeping to myself and just saying like, how could this happen? You know, like how could he just be here 1 second and be gone? Like he was a good guy, you know, like why would this happen to someone? And that was kind of a moment that is kind of like underrated in my life. Like that was when I really had to learn about death and learn that, okay, like not everything is just smooth sailing from here. Like you really got to be strong in the Lord and have your foundation, because if anything happens, like you got to be able to lean on him and trust him. So that was a big moment for me, big moment for my parents too. I'd never seen my dad cry. That was really emotionally like crazy for me. Thank the Lord, he actually ended up accepting Christ right before he passed away, which was amazing. So I hope to see him in heaven one day. But anyways, moving along, the next event that affected me and probably affected a lot of you watching is COVID. That was kind of a tough time for me to just have like life put on halt. I was in my senior year of high school, so I was part of that class that did not get to walk. But it was just a big deal because shutting everything down, I was really invested in baseball at the time, and like a lot of like experiences I was gonna have with friends and graduation. I was looking forward to everything, and to just have it like all like go away was like a big deal. But the big thing that came from that was me being at home so often really forced me to really develop this relationship with my parents that had been there, but it wasn't like now it is now. So like the big thing for that is that something so bad ended up turning so good for me, in a sense that I was like, oh man, this like sucks, you know, I don't get to play baseball, I don't get to graduate, I don't get to do a lot of these things. But in reality, staying home I have a younger brother who's 11 years younger than me, and my parents, just hanging out with them, like it really brought our relationship really close, and we ended up becoming really tight, which was something that like we were, you know, like I said, we were close, but we didn't really have it like we do now. So that was a big deal. And then having to go through, actually had COVID twice, which was not fun, but just being with them was a lot of fun. But that leads me to my next point. Going to kind of jump forward a little bit. They recently moved away to Houston. So not having them here is a really big deal. I was really close with all of them, and I had to learn to be independent. And I was planning on commuting living with them and commuting from their house for all 4 years. So kind of scrambling and just trying to find like, okay, like I'm going to go with my grandma now. And like, that was a big change for me. And I struggled a lot with being okay with that. I kind of hid it a lot. I've been one of these people to just kind of like hide his emotions. I never let really anybody know like what's going on the outside. I always want to be like nice to everybody and just like, you know, smile and stuff. But that was a big change for me, as being independent. And I know like for some people, it's like they can't wait to go and like experience college and like live in the dorms and stuff. But for me, like that was a big deal. So I kind of like shut down for a bit in the second half of the year last year. Didn't really go out. Kind of just kept to myself, didn't really tell anybody what was going on. Could not tell my parents like, oh, you know, like, yeah, I don't know why, like I just had like this pride, like, no, like I'm fine every time they ask, like I'm good, you know, everything's okay. But in the reality, like I was going through a lot of change, and it was, thank the Lord, like I just kind of finally was able to find this strength and be like, you know what, it's okay, like, you know, I gotta move on with my life, I gotta start, you know, being independent. Eventually I was gonna have to do it one day, and so it just happened to happen, you know, a little bit earlier than I expected. But so yeah, that was in 2022. Gonna jump back a little. Another important event in my life, I had played baseball here freshman and part of my sophomore year, and towards the beginning of second semester on freshman year, I separated my shoulder, which is like a pretty rough injury, especially for me. I was a pitcher, and that was another big part. It just seemed like, you know, just another injury, but for me, I had been so like go and like never take a break with baseball, and like baseball's my life and all this and that. And that became kind of like a whoa, like no, like you got to understand, like not everything is going to be about baseball in your life. Like you have to find like, you know, your path, your career and stuff. So that was a big realization for me, kind of like similar to the COVID situation. I had a lot of time to myself to just reflect and just really think about things in life. And I struggled a lot with my identity. I felt like I was putting my identity in baseball entirely. So that like wasn't the life that I wanted to keep going on, and like I really wanted to like change my identity and be someone different other than just like a baseball guy. So that was another big deal. And then just overall, like throughout my life, I've struggled a bit with like being lukewarm at times. I feel like it's since I've been a Christian for a very young age, we kind of tend to like stray every now and then. And a lot of it was in high school, a lot of it even recently throughout like the past semester. Like I've just been kind of lukewarm, kind of like not as like strong in the Lord as I want to be. And I get too comfortable like that sometimes, and I really got to tell myself like, no, like you got to get back to it. And so I'm really thankful actually for this last retreat that we went on. It was really impactful, and I feel like it totally like lit a fire like back in me that like needed to be lighted. But that's just something like I've struggled with like my entire life. But I'm really hoping to like change that, especially this year. Kind of like moving into like towards the end, like where I am now. I'm part of VUREC, like I said, and like my main goal for that is to just like connect with everybody, try and create community with like anybody who's here and stuff. And I feel like having that fire like allows me to really like reach out to the people who are a little shy to play, or reach out to the people who really are just looking for like a friend, and like I'm there, I want to be there for like everybody and stuff. So I'm really thankful. I feel like I'm in a really good spot now with this VUREC. You know, I'm in my junior year. I live with my grandma now, which has actually turned out to be a really hidden blessing, because it's something that she really needs. She needs that, you know, she enjoys that company. I enjoy like being there and like helping her, driving her to the doctor wherever she needs to go. So I think the big like moral of the story for me is that like I gotta just like trust the process with the Lord and stay strong in like my faith and stuff. So that's really it. I'm glad I was able to share this and share a little bit of my story and some of the struggles and experiences I've gone through. So yeah, thank you very much.